guys, welcome back to another ASMR video. Do you hear that sound? That's the sound of gum. G-U-M, by the way. A little piece of gummy gum. Extra white pollen, to be exact. Because that's what we're doing today. As we talk about some stuff. Yeah, I don't. As of recently, I've got to say I don't really. Oh my gosh, can you shut up? If they start working whilst the moment I start to make a video, I'm gonna go in that corner over there and sob. So often I don't really come up with like pre-planned topics. I try to sometimes, but today I've come up with something, not really much, but I just want to have a little chat about open worlds in video games, I guess. Just talk a little bit about some of the games. Well, I think open world games work. When they don't, I don't know, I might have some controversial takes here, so take them all with a grain of salt. They're my personal opinion. I can't imagine they're particularly controversial, but yeah, I guess it all really depends on how you define open world, right? Should we find a definition of open world before we go forward, so I can... Because I guess I hadn't really thought about that, because a few things have come to my mind, and questioning like, what does open world really mean? So, open world, denoting or relating to a video game in which players move freely within a virtual environment and may choose how to achieve their objectives with relative autonomy. Well, that doesn't really make any sense, if I'm honest, because that doesn't actually make sense, because, for example, you wouldn't say that Red Dead Redemption isn't an open world game, but you don't really have any choice in how things play out. It's a linear story. Wikipedia is asking for money again. Let's see what people define it as. Let's see. In video games, an open world is a virtual world in which the player can approach objectives freely, as opposed to a world with more linear and structured gameplay. Notable games in this category include The Legend of Zelda, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Minecraft. Well, I disagree with that description right off the bat there, right? Because how can you say that you can approach objectives freely as opposed to a world with more linear and structured gameplay, and then mention Grand Theft Auto 5, which has linear missions? Granted, you can go and complete those missions, but the missions, when you get in, they are a linear story. You don't get a choice, really. I mean, there are a few moments where you get to choose, right? But generally speaking, the missions are linear. Not in the same way if I said go and defeat what's it called? The Elder Dragon. The Ender Dragon, not Elder Dragon, the Ender Dragon. You could do that very different ways, that you're not forced to go through several objectives. There's not a linear story. But there is another description in games with an open or free roaming world that typically lack level structures like walls and locked doors, or the invisible walls in more open areas that prevent players from venturing beyond them. I think it's a little bit, again, I don't know, because like in GTA 5 you can't go into every single building. I think if I were to determine it, then I would say a video game where the majority of the gameplay time exists within a free roam environment of a sizable world, right? That's what I would count it as, because there are other games like I guess things like the Outer Worlds and games like that, which are they open world? They kind of are, but they're more like hub world games. There are several hubs you can go to that are open environments to do stuff in there. So I guess maybe that's like a sub-genre of open world, perhaps, I don't know. But anyway, if we were to determine open world as like predominantly most of the game takes place in a free roam environment, then we could then include GTA 5, because within that there are linear missions, but generally the most of the time that you're going to play GTA 5 is going to be in the free roam, going from mission to mission, but you can choose within that. And the same with like Red Dead Redemption, right? I feel like that encapsulates open world a bit better than being opposed to a linear and structured gameplay, which I guess it really depends on how you define the prominent parts of those games. But anyway, we've gone on for 6 minutes and not even mentioned what I was talking about. So, yeah, I mean, I mentioned a few games there that do open world fairly well, to be honest. I mean, GTA 5 is really good at open world. There's a lot of stuff to do. I think it's, what I will say, I think there's a point in which you become a little bit bored, because a lot of it is like missions, but when I was playing it, I found, and I felt the same with Red Dead, but Red Dead is a bit more of a, it has more, it's more guilty of this, I think, is what I'm trying to say, which is, there are large moments of like not anything, like of emptiness, and whilst there's beauty in the game, there's a certain point in which you're just kind of riding for a long period of time and nothing really happens. Now granted, you have like effectively random encounters which really spice up the game, and that's interesting, but and like quests that you can come upon, like I remember one quest in Red Dead Redemption, I just like decided to run off the path for a little bit and bumped into a building, and there was an entire mission where I got like drugged and all that stuff. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about, the one with the brother and sister. I thought that was a really cool mission, and there's a lot of open-ended stuff within things like that, depending on the sort of decisions you make, who you kill, who you don't. And I think those work really well, right? Things that aren't quest markers, because the adverse to that is something like Witcher 3, which is really overwhelming. When I load up Witcher 3, when I want to progress, I'm like one of those people that likes to complete everything. If everything is on the map, I want to complete it all, even like the little things, like going and get the treasure. And I feel like I can't progress the game until I've done that. And the issue then is, if I'm not in the mood to just run around and collect all these things, I don't do the mission, and that persists to the point where I stop playing the game. That was the biggest issue I had with Witcher 3, until the point I was like, do you know what? I'm going to force myself to just play the story now. I'm just going to do it, because I want to finish it. And I forced my way through it and did that, but I still felt a bit dissatisfied, like, but then I could have got all these other things and blah 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 blah, and ultimately it's like, but I wouldn't finish the game. So I think there is a good mix between those sorts of things, right? That some games do really well. I feel like it really depends on the kind of experience you want, maybe. Like, for me personally, I don't like no objectives, I don't like no quest markers, but I also don't like too many that's overwhelming for every little thing, as per The Witcher 3, whereby you just see everything everywhere all at once. But at the same time, it gives you reasons to go and explore those areas. So like there are parts of the map where there might not be a quest, where I would never go, I would never explore if there wasn't a quest marker there. And sometimes that's what happens in Red Dead, where I just would be like, well, why would I ever just go riding up there, beyond the fact of just doing it. Or maybe to go hunting, and, you know, don't get me wrong, I think Red Dead is a great game, but I did find myself like, I have limited time, and I'm spending a lot of it just wandering around hoping something happens, or I stumble upon something. But it is still a very good game, don't get me wrong. And as I said, like the adverse with Witcher 3, where suddenly I'm very overwhelmed to the point in which I'm like, because I want to complete everything, I just don't end up playing the game because I don't want to do the things I feel like I have to. And so that brings me to an example, I think, personally, that hits the mark between those two almost perfectly, which is Skyrim and probably any Elder Scrolls, any of the 3 Elder Scroll games. I'm pretty sure Morrowind was by Bethesda, I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure it was. I think those games hit the middle ground on that, like, perfectly. Because you have the quest markers exist, but you don't see them on the map right away, which means you're encouraged to explore a little bit, because quest markers will appear on the distance on your compass when you're travelling, so the quest markers are limited, right? You only see them when you get within a threshold, and you can see if they've been visited or not. And so at that point, as a player, you're like, oh, I want to explore, I want to go and see what that is, or like, at the very least, I want to go there and unlock the location so I can come back at a later date. And that makes you veer off the road, it makes you go exploring. That's where you find all the other ones that are buried in the wilderness. Can you imagine trying to play Skyrim if every single quest marker, every single like location marker appeared on the map the moment you started the game? It would be ridiculous, it would be so overwhelming, and I would just be like, okay, I'm just gonna go like through a swath and like clear this area of objectives. And I don't like doing that because it feels like an antithesis to the game, but it's the way in which I feel like I have to play a game. That's why I do Witcher 3. I'll go and do all of these little things in an area, but I wish it was more of a case of appearing as you explored, like you get maybe one or two things in that area, and when you go there you have a compass like Skyrim where it alerts you there are other things in the area, but you have to go and visit them in order to unlock them. And you have this natural exploration that rewards you by exploring with new things to explore. And so Skyrim, I think, is probably one of the best examples of how to present the player with things to do in an open world. And it's very important that it does it that way, because the open world is so full. I don't think anyone could argue that Skyrim is a bland open world. Not only do you have all of this plethora of things going on, like you travel for 2 minutes in one direction, there is somewhere to explore. There is a dungeon or a cave or a tower or a ruin, or any litany of different things for you to get distracted by, get some cool loot, to explore and feel like you are actually an adventurer out there exploring the world. But there's also the random encounters that happen on the road, whether it be a bandit, someone trying to deliver a letter, a dragon attack, and this is just the vanilla game. That's not even including all of the mod support for, you know, things like all the different overhauls. I don't know if you guys ever play with have ever played with Skyrim mods, and assuming most people have, but things like the overhaul of the war, where you like can encounter full-on Stormcloak and Imperial battles in the wild, very cool. All these different random encounters that spruce the game up, but even in the base game as vanilla. It's so like expansive, so much out there, and all of them are like violent encounters. There's chances to bump into characters on the road, and all these fun things. So Skyrim really does hit that perfectly, in my opinion. And if I guess it doesn't work for every video game, right? But I think generally speaking, it's probably one of the more successful ones. Like, I guess it depends on how the developers want the game to be perceived. In something like Red Dead Redemption, you don't really have. I mean, you don't have the quest markers for situations like that, right? When I rode past that house, I did not get this like thing appearing on my compass, like, oh, this is an area of interest. I just happened upon there. Someone spoke to me. I got off and thought, oh, I'll investigate that. But at the same time, I felt like I had found something hidden. I felt like I had achieved something, or I had found something in an explorative way without any hand-holding, and that itself was a different kind of feeling. So I guess there's a balance there, right? As to what you want your players to feel. Do you want them to feel like they're so immersed that it just kind of, they naturally came upon it, it could have happened to anyone, they could have missed it? Or do you want them to have like a little nudge to move in that direction? Or do you want them to just like at their leisure decide, I want to go here because I know there's something? And I guess it's about knowing your audience, knowing the tone of the game, and Red Dead Redemption is very, realistic. Skyrim is not. So, I guess the tone of the game varies, but even in things like that in GTA and Red Dead, on the mini-map you will see sometimes little things appear, like little blobs to indicate there's something of interest. Like, it'll be like a green blob, like someone has got a mission or something like that. And some of those are like, someone stole my purse, go and capture them, or like, can you give me a ride home? And I think that some of those things are quite cool. I like those inclusions. I like random encounters, but I like random encounters that are varied, interesting, and have something to it. Like when I go into a shop and then two guys come in to mug the place. It's not something that it's a distraction. It's not something that there was a quest marker for, like, there's a shop being robbed out. I was in there, I was like, I'm gonna get some new clothes. I walk in, two guys come in and hold the place up, rob it, and I just kind of turn around and mow them down in the middle of the area. And then I get the police on me, because apparently that's a crime. But anyway, I think it really depends, right, on what works for the players and what you want the game tone to be. So I know I just kind of shat a little bit on Red Dead and GTA for it, but I think that's because me as a player, generally, I like to feel that I don't have to wander around to find something. But at the same time, when I do find something in a game like that, I feel it is really immersive, and it maybe is worth the payoff. But at the same time, I will be honest, there were large swaths of time, particularly in Red Dead, where I started to get bored, where I started to feel like all I can see are the main quests, and I want to explore this world, but I'm not being given anything else for it, I'm not being given anything else to go and explore, so I guess I'll just do the missions. And I felt like I was missing out on content, and I don't like that feeling. Whereas at least with other games, I feel more confident, especially with, like, I guess Witcher 3, you're not missing anything, because it's all there. You can see what it is that you're missing and what you're not, and you can make, I guess, some informed decisions. So, yeah, there's that. What else? Yeah, I guess, whilst we're on the topic of, like, open world games, I think it was interesting when it began, when it was the first one or two games, But I'm so sick and tired of the Ubisoft synchronization towers. So many other games use it. If it's sparing and it's interesting, I can get behind it a little bit. Horizon Zero Dawn and the sequel do it fairly well. It's less of just climb a tower, get to a location for the sake of just doing it, and more of like, here's a little puzzle and here's a reward of the map. I just don't mess with the mechanic if it's too much. At least in Horizon there's like only a handful, and they're interesting puzzles that you've got to figure out how to get up there. I at least can appreciate that. But generally speaking, I'm sick and tired of them in Assassin's Creed. Just get rid of them. They're so boring. There's no point to them and they're not interesting anymore. It was interesting when you had to figure out the right way up a building, but now it's just like hold the stick forward and keep your finger on X and climb. That's it. And then you get to the top and just synchronize. It's like, just show the map from the beginning if you're not going to make it interesting. It's such a tired trope, and I cannot wait for the day that it disappears. But the other thing I would say with some of those games, and probably an issue that plagues a lot of open world games, and kind of, I'll be honest, tied in a little bit to what I was saying about Red Dead, is that there is just so many times nothing to do. What is the point of having an open world if there's nothing in it? You know, you can add all the set dressing you want, but if there is nothing to do, it is boring and pointless. So many games have this issue. I'll be honest, I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head. But so many times there's just like not a lot to do. And if you can have an open world, the point is that you have all of this space to include all of these different things for players to do. But if you don't, what's the point in doing it? There's literally no point in having it. So I think, like when it comes to open world games, that's another reason I think that Skyrim is probably one of the peak examples of open world games, because there are so many things to do. You can never wander too far. I think there was, I can't remember the particular video it was, or like the interview it was, but there was a game designer talking about open world games and about the psychology of it, and being like, if a player has to move like more than a minute in a direction without encountering something that is interesting, then you failed, or something along those lines, because that's the moment that they start to get bored, like just waiting. Because at that point, just shrink the location, bring it closer together. If you cannot be asked to make the world full of life and full of interesting things for people to do and interact with, don't make it, don't include it. I do feel like there are a number of games that do fall into that category. I hate to say it, but I do feel like Cyberpunk falls in there a little bit. There are a lot of things to do, but so many of them are just very like repetitive and generic. I guess maybe that's not a fair statement, if I'm honest. Probably because I just expected something a little bit different from Cyberpunk than what was actually delivered. So maybe I'm just a little bit like biased on that, but I feel like sometimes, other than the quests and objectives, there's not a lot in the world, right? There's not a lot I can go and do, and sometimes you will drive for a while and not interact with anything, but at the same time, a game where you drive very quickly in the map might be large, but by means of the travel is smaller, or feels smaller because you can drive. I guess it's not a bad thing, right? I've bought like cars in Cyberpunk. I want to drive them. I don't want to be driving them round one street and interact with something, right? I guess. So maybe that's not quite so fair, and maybe I would feel the opposite, being like, there's something every street and like I can't stop. I constantly have to stop and I don't even get a chance to just drive my car around from one place to another before I'm interrupted. So maybe that's not quite so fair, but I don't know. I think for me, beyond just the missions, I would like to have seen other things in there, right? Things like more interesting shops, or more interesting interactions on the street, or other things to do, I guess. But yeah, I think that's some of my takes on open worlds. Generally, they are probably one of my favourite genres of games. Although I understand that it's hard to really call it a genre. It's more like a template for the game, right? It's a basic notion of how the game world exists rather than an actual genre. Because I guess you could have like horror, open worlds, you could have action or driving or whatever. So I guess it's not really that helpful of a description. I've got chocolate for some reason. It was when I had my breakfast. I've got Nutella in my glasses. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of a game template. But I do like my linear story-driven games like Uncharted, Last of Us, etc., etc. But there's something about open world feeling free, where you can jump in and do what you want to, rather than a linear game where you jump in and continue the story. So yeah, I guess that's my take on that. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you have any personal opinions about open world games that you agreed with, disagreed with, or something else that I haven't thought of, I haven't said in this video, make sure to drop a comment down below letting me know your thoughts about some of the takes today, or anything else. Whilst you're at it, whilst you're down there, you might as well hit the like button, you might as well press subscribe if you're not already, and that bell icon to be informed when I upload, which is every day. And I will see you in the next one, but not, and the next one might be actually over there, the video's over there. Whoa, crazy. Go check them out, and I'll see you in that, whatever video comes next, I guess. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.